My name is Brian Cook. I'm the founder and president of StretchMed, and you're listening to S.M.E Stories.
You are now listening to the next great small business podcast. Welcome to the S.M.E Stories podcast, where it is all about small businesses in Canada. And here's your host, Ken Alfred.
Hey everybody, thanks for down on the show. We got a great episode today with Brian Cook. Now, Brian Cook is the founder and CEO of StretchMed. So a little bit about Brian. Brian's been an entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience, opening about 200 locations across 4 different boutique fitness brands. He has a Bachelor of Science or a BS degree in exercise physiology from Northeastern University and an MBA from Babson College. His most recent company, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is StretchMed, which is headquartered in Puerto Rico. Now, StretchMed is a one-on-one stretching studio franchise model. Its purpose is to eliminate chronic pain, increase mobility, rejuvenate, and help you move well. Now, StretchMed was founded back in 2019, has currently over 30 locations open in 15 states, with 30 more to be opened in the next 12 months. So a little bit also about Brian is that he's from Boston, but he, like I mentioned before, he resides in Puerto Rico. He's a former hockey player and loves boating. So it's going to be a very interesting little discussion today we have with Brian, because we're now talking about the health and wellness space. So sit back and absorb. All right, guys, we have Brian Cook from StretchMed. Brian, how you doing, my friend?
Good, Ken. Good to be here, man.
Yeah, so I think Brian is in a very interesting position, because whereabouts are you right now, Brian? From what I've been told, you're in a very nice, harsh weather, right?
Yeah, so I'm in Puerto Rico, and it's either 75 or 80. Those are essentially the two temperatures.
75 or 80. Sorry, let me just check my Fahrenheit to Celsius calendar here, because I'm a Canadian here. So roughly between 24 and 26. Oh my God. So, you know, we're coming to you from Canada here, and just recording on this time, I've just found out that yesterday was the first day of spring, and found out that we're going to probably get between 4 to 15 centimeters of snow today. So,
wow. I'm from Boston though, so I'm very familiar with harsh climate.
Yes, and I always appreciate places to live where you have the 4 seasons, because I guess it's so you just get adjusted. I mean, it doesn't shock you as much. So those who come from other countries where it's all snow, and they come to some place that doesn't have snow, or vice versa, you know, it's like a big shock to them. But I think, you know, where you're from in Boston, and just being a Canadian in general, you're exposed to all 4, so we can kind of adjust anywhere, really, right? If it's no snow, with snow, we're all good, right? So, all right. So, Brian Cook, StretchMed, what's your story?
Yeah, so StretchMed is it's our latest company. So for me personally, it's my 4th company in the last 30 years since I kind of began my entrepreneurial career. Have learned a ton, and really exciting to just keep learning. Every time we open a company, you just learn a bunch of new things. So I'm already excited over the next company. But StretchMed, its purpose is to eliminate chronic pain, increase mobility, rejuvenate, and help you move well. So it's really just designed, you know, nothing like it exists. You know, there's physical therapy, then chiropractic hit the scene, then massage therapy came into action about 20 years ago. But stretch therapy essentially is a brand new vertical, and because nothing before it has ever stretched every joint, you know, moved every joint in the body the way it's supposed to move. So super exciting. And then even recently, we've gotten the price point from the typical $80 an hour to $80 a month. So now we're piloting in locations. It's over $80 a month. You can come in 4 times a month, you know, 4 25-minute stretches for $80, and we're seeing explosion of number of customers. And it makes sense, right? $80 an hour versus 80 months, a huge difference. So 10 times the customers can now afford it. And we like to say, like, now the waitress or waiter at Chili's that has sciatica can now walk into a StretchMed and come to the program once a week to help with that problem.
So just to understand, so this is like a full body stretch. So it's not like if someone's saying, okay, yeah, it's just my neck or my upper back that needs some stretching. It's like you go from head to toe?
Yeah, so the signature protocol is 36 stretches head to toe. So it's really 55-minute stretches. 55 minutes of stretching is a 15-minute warm-up, and then followed by a 55-minute stretch routine in every joint in the body. So it's pretty awesome. yeah, it's pretty awesome. And we're growing really fast. So we're really excited that the customers are loving it, and excited to actually open. We're getting out. We just started marketing in Canada. So we've got a handful of prospects, hoping to open our first Canadian locations there.
Well, so what got you into the whole stretch med, or even considering this? Because, like you said, there's chiropractors and massage therapists, there's physiotherapists, and my wife, Mrs. K, she's actually a physio herself, and I'm a former personal trainer back in the day as well. So, where did the whole idea of stretching? Is it like partner stretching, pretty much, right? So, they're actually working with a specialist that's going to stretch them from head to toe. So, where did the concept come from?
So I've been in boutique fitness for a very long time. Started personal training when I was 20 years old, and opened a one-on-one training studio at 23, got that to 3 locations, then kind of blew up, had to close one, sell one, hunkered back down. Then I looked at growing again, and I was like, I really don't want to go through what I just went through. So I looked at franchising. And I looked at franchising my one-on-one studio, because at the time I think I was 26. My business was making $100,000 a year, and this is many years ago. And in the process of looking at franchising my concept, I discovered another franchise it was actually called Fitness Together back in 2001. So I negotiated with the founder and bought the rights to Massachusetts, which is a really cool concept. So they call it really area representation. Back then, they called it master franchising. So I bought the rights to Massachusetts with a $10,000 deposit, and he financed the other $90,000, and then just had a huge win over the next 5 years. Sold 60 franchises, got 40 open, and I exited that business with for $1.2 million. So it was kind of a nice. And then
Nice.
So was a franchisee. Then I started my own franchise, which is a small group training concept for women called Get a Chick for Women. That, really big success the first 5 years, got to 100 locations in 16 states, or fairly right off the bat, and then went through a big disruption, just kind of big disruption. And then COVID was another 1-2 punch.
Oh.
But it's still something. And when you love it, it's really not a big deal. It's hard, but I've always loved what I did, so it will kind of weather the hard years. But what got me into stretching was back in 2015, a family friend had asked me out for coffee to get some advice, and I said sure. And we met up, and he said, I heard about this one-on-one stretching concept happening out in California. What do you think? And I was like, oh, interesting. And I just remembered, myself, I used to, all my personal training concepts, we all had a stretching routine at the end of it. And I actually used to stretch and train one of the partners of the Boston Red Sox way back in my day. So I had stretched him for 30 minutes and trained him for 30 minutes. So, it was interesting. So my advice to the guy was, pick a great territory. Like most businesses, if you pick a good geography that's got population density and wealth, almost anything will work. So we went our separate ways. Then 2017, one of my team members left us to move on the development side of a different franchise, and then left that franchise to go to another franchise, and ended up at the company Stretch Lab. So kind of got me a lens into that company. I was like, oh, interesting. And then I saw stretch zones kind of popping up, so it became on my radar. And so for me personally, it was really to wait to see if it would materialize into something. And once I saw it materializing, I was like, oh, you know what? It's in our wheelhouse. I have great team, bunch of fitness professionals on our team, and we're really just a bunch of studio operators. So I was like, we have the capability. I think we're getting into the stretching business. And so for me, being a fact finder, and I really have to know everything or I just can't do it. So just, took my daughter, we flew around the country, went to all the competitors, we checked out their stretching routines, and I was surprised that they were different everywhere. They're even different within the same companies. So there wasn't a really good system. I was like, oh, that's interesting. They're leaving the stretching up to the whatever the therapist wanted to do. So I'm like, I definitely know we can do it better. So I came back to Boston, and we really spent 9 months on the stretch. We spent a long time on the product. Had a team of athletic trainers. We had my muscular therapist, who's the best I've ever been to. He was involved in it. Another guy, kinesiology, and then me and another person on my team. We have backgrounds in exercise physiology. So we really collectively built this crazy good stretch, and it's essentially a scripted sequence head to toe. So we're just accomplishing a more volume of stretching in the same minute of time than our competitors. So opened our first location, piloted it, huge success, sold 3-4 franchises right off the bat, and then COVID hit. And then we had to kind of grind through COVID.
Yes.
And then wait a year or two, and now things are taking off nicely again.
Yeah, because I mean, people have to understand too. During COVID, when things were really basically shut down, a lot of the the personal service or anything where you're literally touching people or working with people, those ones are really, really hard, right, to really do, because those things were closed down because they didn't know what caused about transmission and all that sort of stuff, right? So, and it's funny too, because I mean, when I used to train, I used to always do my client like yourself would always stretch them at the end. What a lot of them look forward to was that cool down stretch where you're just pushing just a little bit more, and they're usually very relaxed by the end of it, right? And I always thought that was such a really cool part, but I'm like, no one ever got to stretch me, right? My wife's a physio and she doesn't even stretch me either, so I'm trying to see if we can get that on board here. So currently, how big is let's talk about first your immediate team, so your business team, but then also we can talk about the number of locations that are all over the place right now.
Yeah, so we have about 12 people in total, but one thing that we've done incredibly well is we've got like a core team. We've got a guy in LA. I've got some people here in Puerto Rico with me, and then we have a really large remote team and a bunch of key players in the Philippines actually. So we've done a really good job as a team building really good SOPs, and then bringing Filipinos in who are just amazing. I mean, I have a paralegal that's writing franchise agreements, sale agreements, lease agreements, negotiating contracts with me. So it's really cool. So as you're a new emerging company, you've really got to keep an eye on expenses, and if you can articulate your process well enough, you don't have to pay a huge amount of money to then have it implemented and followed.
Yeah, and if you find the right kind of people like you're talking about, they'll be loyal to you to the end, right? Like, and in some cases, they might actually help expand your business beyond what you may have thought yourself, right? Because if they believe in the vision that you're showing to them, they can come up with things that, like you said, that comes outside the box that maybe as the owner or the founder, you're just like, huh, I never really would have thought about that. So that could be something that's really good. So, so how many locations are you looking? So can you tell me how many locations you have right now in terms of franchisees, and also how many do you plan on opening up in the future?
Yeah, so we have 30 open. We have 27 in development, and we just, as of September, like just a little while ago, we just new corporate office, new people on our team, and just started pumping money into marketing. So we're pretty confident we'll have, probably 60 open by the end of the year, another probably 60 sold. And then next year, we should double every year, at least till we hit the 500,000-600,000. And I think I mentioned just before we hit record, we're going to start raising capital. So I'm used to, everything I've always done has been bootstrap, no partners, no debt, just grind it out. But now I'm gonna smarten up, and we're doing some equity crowdfunding, and we're looking at Start Engine, Republic. I think the other one's WeFunder, and I think we're gonna go with Republic, and we're gonna do a 5% equity raise. And you don't have to be accredited investor, so essentially anyone can buy micro shares of StretchMed. So it's pretty exciting. So we're going to raise 500,000 in this first round, and then the plan is to do subsequent 5% equity raises and just give away 25% of the company. So we're not limited by capital to pour back into marketing and people, and we're going to hire a COO pretty soon, so I can kind of step back and just develop that one person.
Yeah, because I mean, I think from being the CEO yourself, I mean, think the next biggest hire should be like, you have the concept and idea, and is having someone to run it. Because especially now that you have kind of like the system and the processes in place, having that chief operating officer to make sure, all right, everything is still running, and you're going to be focused on the creativity side of it, trying to create different things and things that we can potentially apply and maybe grow it as well, which is really good to hear. So like so currently right now in your operations then, so you said you have about 12 people and you said they're kind of all over the remote place right now. So where do you see as the biggest expense you see that you're seeing right now?
Biggest expense?
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely payroll. Definitely payroll right now. And but again, not really a big deal. We've been positive cash flow from day one, so we've been profitable since the first day we opened. So we've done a really good job at that.
So you're kind of debunking that whole myth that, okay, so you'll probably be, operating at a loss for the first few years before it starts to do that. Where you kind of say, well, no, if you can do it right up front, might as well get it started right way, start profitable, and then just work on growing those profits pretty much.
Yeah, I would really challenge any business that's not profitable really fast. I think that's a problem. So we just don't get into businesses like that, just because to me that's really dangerous. So we pretty much, and we were talking earlier about financial modeling, and if you do the modeling right, and so for StretchMed, there's probably 12 data points that we measure, and it's really simplified to 3. And it's the first one is total intros booked. So we give everyone a free intro stretch. So total intros booked tells us the marketing's working. Total customers tells us the sales process is working. And what we tell our owners is if you're not growing every week with number of customers, look around and pull the closest fire alarm because you have a problem. You're not growing every single week, you have a problem. And then the third number is lifetime value, which is going to really speak to the retention of your customers. And we just take total revenue divided by total customers, you get lifetime value. So, and you got to know lifetime value in order to know what to spend on marketing. Because if you don't know lifetime value, you have no idea what customer acquisition costs are. So we just measure 3 data points, and then from those data points, we can look at several others that tell us that, if there's a problem, just like your health, blood pressure, heart rate, and cholesterol, maybe to see what kind of health you're in your business. Those are three things you need to know.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So let me ask you this then. So are there any expenses that you're currently seeing right now? Because we said payroll is one of the biggest ones. But what are some other ones that most people don't even know about, that most people don't even see, that you're actually having to pay a lot of?
Yeah, I would say I don't really think we have software expenses. In franchising, the one expense that's kind of big, but it is what it is we have to have an audit done every year. It's like $10,000 per company. So we have 2 different franchise companies. So it's like, $10,000. That doesn't include your accounting, doesn't include your legal. It's just simply an audit where what the auditor does is checks the CPA's work and just gives it the certification. So, but otherwise,
so they're franchising your company, but are they auditing franchisees as well, or just the main one like you guys?
Yeah, they're auditing our financials, because in order to franchise a business, the FTC requires your financials to be audited every year. So when we send you a franchise agreement or an FDD, franchise disclosure document, inside that you'll see 3 years of audited financials.
Interesting. Oh, good to know. Good to know. So let's talk about a little bit about social media here, because this is not a social media podcast. So how important is social media for your particular business, and what tools do you guys use?
Yeah, great. So paid ads is just ridiculously effective for our business. Facebook, Instagram, at the store level, the studio level, and essentially wherever we put a StretchMed, we market, let's say roughly a 5-mile radius, and we hit every single person that's 40 plus with some type of ad. And then when it's a compelling ad with a compelling offer, really not difficult to get people to come in and try it. But what's really interesting, we went through several agencies that were just horrible. And we had a proficiency to run ads at a decent level. So when we would hire agencies, we just expected them to do a lot better, and they just failed miserably. And we finally just landed a new agency just in the last couple of weeks who's just blown us away. And I'm incredibly excited for him to handle all the paid ads, and he's running 3 organic posts a week for all locations.
So then let me just to touch upon this here. So for a lot of businesses, including myself and everything, social media in terms of what to post and a lot of other things, it could be almost like you take almost a course just to try to figure that out. So like for your franchisees, then do they have to come up with their own social media, or do you have kind of like a head office kind of social media things, whether it's templates or something? Because obviously you want it to be very location specific too, right? I'm sure there's some generic ones that you can put out, but how do you help the franchisees from that perspective?
Yeah, so everything we do is really plug and play. And we've just doing this for a while now, we realized that the less, the less pain you have running a franchise, the better you're going to like it, the more you're going to open, the more you're going to refer. So we handle everything from start to finish. So you would just plug into this marketing vendor. He would run your paid ad strategy and your organic strategy, and all he probably has to do is just from time to time submit some local content, some great videos and great photos. So for the most part, everything's handled soup to nuts.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's good here because I think especially if you're a franchisee that you just say you have the finances to at least start the franchise, but let's say you're a little bit older, you're not social media savvy, like aside from word of mouth, which is still one of the freest forms of advertising you can do, the social media piece of because what always used to impress me, Ryan, were when I have like friends or family or former coworkers that I'm seeing that they're posting something almost every single day, right? Whether it's pictures, videos, captions, and I'm thinking, how much time do they actually have to really do all that stuff, right? Because I'm thinking, of course, me being an idiot, because I'm thinking, oh, they're just doing it right then and there, and then they're releasing it, right? Like just a minute. But I think when you batch it all of that up, they probably pre-record a lot of those things. They probably produce like a batch of them and then just schedule them when to come out at specific times where they feel that the most reach that they can have, right?
Right. Yeah. Yep. So it's a big part of it.
Nice. So, all right, let's talk about the actual franchising industry, but more we'll keep it within the health and wellness space, right? Because obviously you could probably talk about every type of franchisee in the world, but what is your opinion of, I guess, the health and wellness franchises that are out there, and where do you think they're currently going?
Yeah. I think it's great. I mean, I love franchising, and off camera, we were talking a little bit about, starting StretchMed helped me really, 4 years ago, just tap into it. I love creating companies from scratch, and I love scaling them through franchising. So in the near future, my plan is to start another company that's going to help entrepreneurs franchise, what they do, and because I think it's great. And actually most things can be franchised. All you need is a trademark, you need an operations manual, and you need a franchise disclosure documents. Pretty simple. And if you've got a business that, let's say, makes $100,000 a year, to me it's franchisable, because there's just a ton of people out there. And particularly if you can scale that and someone can own multiple units, it makes it super attractive.
Okay. So does that mean too, like if your franchisee wants to open up if they want access to a second or third location, I assume that the fee is a little bit reduced. Like it's almost like bulking, right? So if you want to bulk up and bulk order something, you can actually get a little bit of a discount on it, right?
Yeah. There's just definitely discounts when people do more units, and pretty much every franchise. And I think the one elusive fact about business and creating wealth, and the way we like to articulate it, is wealth creation is the direct correlation of your ability to develop people. So that's something I get really clear with my team. We're in the business of developing people, and the way to develop people, you need a really detailed SOP, corresponding checklist, KPI attached to it, so you can really see its effect. And then it's just, and the widget, which is a stretching studio in this case, is just highly defined. So there's nothing left to chance, or nothing left to, interpretation. It's just run the play and you'll have a successful business.
Yeah, because I think and for some of the listeners who are not familiar with SOP, it's basically your standard operating procedures, right? It's basically the manual of how to run the particular business, right? Because I think there's some people that feel that, they can, I think one of the best lines I remember hearing was I think it's an old Robert Kiyosaki quote where he said, okay, I think he was in a room somewhere and he said, how many people can make a better burger than McDonald's? And of course, a lot of people raise their hands. They're very personalized things. And okay, great. But who here can create a better system than McDonald's? Nobody put up their hand, right? So it's one of those kind of things that, that SOP manual that shows the franchise, because remember, sometimes you might have franchisees that like yourself, Brian, might have some, exercise physiology, health and wellness experience. So they might, from the technical side, they might be actually okay, to do the stretches, prescribe them, maybe even train the staff how to do them, like the specialists and stuff. But in terms of running an actual business, that's a bit of a different story, right? Because back in the personal training days, I said this story a few times on a few shows where sometimes personal trainers, when they start, a lot of them, they really just want to help people, right? They want to get people get in shape and, and be healthy. Sometimes they're actually the worst business people because, they go in with the knowledge of helping that if you say, okay, it's going to cost you, 100 sessions at $50 a session. Oh, that's too expensive. Okay, how about 2? Right. So there's no sliding scale. It's just like here and then right down here. Right. So some people who don't have that experience, that SOP has to be really clear so that there is no question of how to do things anymore. It's almost like cut and paste for it. Right. Because it's the same thing about trying to create a restaurant. I'm sure you can create a restaurant and all this sort of stuff, but especially if you're trying to, let's say, approach financing and try to get bank funding, for example, if a bank looks at you and says, okay, what do you want to do, Ken? I want to start my own restaurant versus, okay, Ken, what are you looking to do? I'm looking to buy a McDonald's franchise. So at least at the bank perspective's mind is that, okay, I don't know the other Ken who just said he wanted to start a restaurant, but I know this Ken wants to start a McDonald's franchise. So I get an idea of like, okay, I don't have to question what kind of policies and procedures they have to do because it's a McDonald's. It's like, they know that. So it's kind of cool to really think about that. So, all right. So is there any other misconceptions you feel when you tell someone that, you're a franchisor, like, if someone came to you and said, oh, I'm a franchise owner or I'm looking to, look for franchisees, is there any misconceptions people have when you tell them that?
I think what I've learned in the last maybe 5 or 6 years is that most people don't really know what a franchisor really is. They kind of have an idea. And most people think of franchising as just buying a McDonald's or a StretchMed or a, Orange Theory, whatever franchise is out there. And what was really startling for me to learn maybe 5 years ago is that of the 4,000 or so franchisors out there, 50% don't make it past 20 locations. Ooh. And then 90% don't make it past 100. So when I heard that, I was really just shocked. And what it speaks to is that there's no support for the franchisors.
That was gonna be my thing. That's what I thought.
So what we're gonna create is the company's gonna be called Everest Franchise Development, and it's essentially gonna be a franchise of franchisors. So create an ecosystem that supports franchisors on this journey of building out their systems and providing support to their franchisees. So that's going to be super fun. There's a lot of legal charlatans out there. We've been the victim of multiple attorney attacks that are completely frivolous and have cost, hundreds of thousands to defend. And I was just shocked by it. So I want to create this ecosystem so we can really hammer these charlatan attorneys. There's a few attorneys that the names you were mentioned, we won't sell the person a franchise. It's like just mention the name and you will not be buying one of our brands because we've had such bad experience with them and they're just so deceptive and just crooks. It's like ambulance chasing in the franchise space. Same thing that goes on. They just hunt for problems and they take a contract that all the parties agree to and they just try to dismantle it. And it essentially wrecks the sanctity of the franchisor-franchisee relationship.
So sorry, they're the ones that try to start trouble between the franchisor and the franchisee?
Yeah, and they
really?
you tell the franchisees that this is wrong and this is a mistake and let's correct it, then they'll get a deposit out of you, and then they'll take it, run it off, so it ends up in litigation. Everyone pays more money, and then we fortunately have won all our cases, but tons of money and time in damage is caused.
So then this, like you said, this franchise company that you're going to be creating, that basically you're helping out franchisors, you're helping them to literally, not just, okay, I want to start my own franchise. It's like giving them the learning, the building blocks of, okay, here's what you have to keep in mind when you're starting your franchise before you even start thinking about selling it, but making sure that you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and all the different processes that have to be covered for it, which is really good, because I think for a lot of cases, most people, they'll run their own company just themselves. They'll see profit. They'll think, okay, and let's say they hit that threshold. Brian would say, okay, making $100,000 on my thing, franchise it. That might be easier because we can duplicate this. And I guess you're there to help kind of like walk them through and really, I wouldn't say scrutinize, but go in with a fine-tooth comb to say, okay, we see your concept, although we see there could be some things you might need to worry about on this side, that let's figure that out before you start selling franchisees the same vision. Okay, no, that's pretty cool. So, all right. So I guess the last question I have on this particular industry here. So what has been your biggest failure, but also your biggest success so far?
My biggest failure was, let's see, the biggest one was back when I exited the master franchise license that I had acquired. Woke up the next day with $1.2 million in the bank, starting with nothing. It was just like, wow, this is crazy. And then did I take the summer off? No. I had a new sport fishing boat that I really didn't use that much, but just because you love creating companies. It's like planning every day. So started my fitness, a new small group training fitness concept. But then at the same time, I was going to graduate school, and we had a project in a franchise class actually, and the project was to create a franchise. So I didn't want to disclose the fitness concept that was real. So I'm like, hey, what do you guys think about a franchise that's gonna look at the home improvement business? Because for me, I'm a licensed contractor and had built decks when I was 15 years old and had home improvement companies. So they were like, sure. So we built a franchise model that would compete with Mr. Handyman that had 100+ units at the time. And at the end of the course, I was like, wow, this is a really good franchise model. And I told my team, well, you guys want to start this? And I had money in the bank and no taker. So it's like, all right, I'll do it myself. And open up the first, hired a guy, got a van. It was called Around the House Home Improvement, cool logo, and really killer marketing event. We basically put a full color flyer in 30,000 newspapers, and we gave everyone 2 free hours of work. So
wow.
Pouring off the hook, because then we come in and do 2 free hours. You'd see the van, the uniform, professionalism, and then you'd like, well, while you're here, do these other 2. So it did what we predicted, which was it broke even. So we came in for 2, you asked for 2 more, you paid $65 an hour. And so the long and short of it is I didn't know my numbers. I didn't do the financial modeling that I was telling you earlier about. So what was happening, and then the business went from 4 vans to 8 vans, and it was just crazy busy. So as we're charging $65 an hour, paying technicians $25 an hour, I later learned that my break even was $75 an hour, and we're charging $65 an hour. So blowing, and then as you scale that up, you're scaling up the losses. So we were blowing $20,000 a month on fitness, because I was three new locations. I was blowing $20,000 a month on home improvement, and I was living on $20,000 a month. So when you think about that, you start blowing $60,000 a month really quick. So that was a brutal kind of awakening. And what I did about a year or so later, and I lost $200,000. I mean, all in, I lost a a full 200,000 in a home improvement company. And that was like big safety net. And I just said after that experience, I took responsibility. And then what ended up happening, the right hand guy that I hired was just a genius crook that you would read about in a news, like you see it in a movie. Like he would tell you a lie and remember it a year later. And long and short of it, he was using our crew to finish his old jobs and getting customers to pay in cash. And then somehow, it finally was uncovered. But the greatest growth I had was when I took responsibility. The bottom line is that if you build the right company, no one can do that to you. It's just a fact. So, and the point is that I was a aggressive entrepreneur that didn't know his numbers as much as he needed to. So I basically gave the business away to a guy. Gave it away. I focused on fitness, finished graduate school, really became super analytical, and now we know every penny in the company, where it's going, what it's doing. And before I touch anything, we have this whole financial modeling framework that we put every business through. And so, yeah, I just, that was my biggest lesson. And it could have put me out of business like permanently, or at least nothing's permanent. It just means it causes many years of, torture, because when you lose your money, you lose your ability to grow.
Well, what I find interesting, Brian, is that I think you are a specific breed of entrepreneur. Because I think for most people, first they want to start maybe a business or a side business just to supplement. Let's say they have a full-time job, or just to supplement their money. And then there are some that, okay, I'll just start my company, but then I just want to keep my company and just keep it forever. And then there's the other ones where you're a different breed, where you create these companies. Let's say you get really successful. You have, like you said, $1.2 million in the bank. Now, to the average person, they'll be like, that's vacation time. And I can see how your mind works. Like, okay, I'll take a little bit of a break, but what do I do now? What business can I start now? It's like, I think for some entrepreneurs, they're just like, I use the analogy, like, let's say I was a professional athlete of some kind. We win whatever the major championship is, NBA championship or Super Bowl, World Series. I always feel like I would just start my own company right then and there and just, milk it for all it's worth and just keep it, right? Don't even bother trying. And almost like as soon as you achieve the top of your profession, you'd be like, all right, I'm good. I don't need to do anything anymore. Let's just make sure I save my money, and so we can live comfortably and look after my family. But I think for creative people like yourself, that's kind of hard, isn't it? Like, even if you suddenly win, let's say you had 5 million of that, 10 million of that, 20, whatever your magic number is. I still feel like no matter how much time you could just be laying down where you are right now, which I'm still envious right now, and be like, all right, I can still see the wheels working in your brain to say, okay, all right, that's great. I got to start something else.
Yeah. So I think the best way to explain that, right, is I heard this definition once. Retirement is doing all of what you love and none of what you hate. So the minute you're doing that, like I had a buddy that he's stay-at-home dad, and the last decade or 20 years we've known each other, he'd always try to get me to go golfing like middle of the week, and many times I could go, but I felt funny telling him that I'd rather work. So if you'd rather work than play golf or hockey or whatever your other hobbies are, you're doing the right work. So for me, it doesn't matter if I have $50 million in the bank, it would not change creating and scaling companies, because it's just a super fun game. And as long you do anything, like whatever, I would tell everyone, like, take a decade and learn a particular task, become an expert in a particular field, deep domain expertise, make some money there. And then you look at side hustling, just from straight investments, but be really careful you do what you love. Like, it's like the questions are, what would you do if you didn't have to make any money, right? And then you answer that question and then figure out how to make money at it. Because it's such hard work to be successful, I think, in a business. if you don't love it, man, forget that. I would have quit a long time ago if I didn't love my work.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like I joke with people, as like with guests all the time. If I win the lottery and I suddenly have all the money in the bank, I had what they call FU money. Like you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I would still be podcasting just because I really enjoy this part. Now I'd still hire a social media person, an editor, and all that sort of stuff. Maybe a VA to, get new guests or anything. But the only thing I want to be involved with is this. This is the part that I enjoy the most, right? So where can people find you?
Yeah, so the website is stretchmedstudios.com. That's just the main thing that we're doing right now. But then probably LinkedIn, Brian R. Cook on LinkedIn. You'll find me, and we're going to start dabbling with the, having an initial 8-person group come to Puerto Rico for a couple of days and kind of start to build out a case study on franchising their concepts. It'll be pretty fun.
Anyways, my friend, thank you for being on the show. It was awesome.
Great to be here. Talk soon. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the S.M.E Stories podcast, which is owned by Northway Capital Group. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Northway Capital Group.